Hello, my name's David. One of the most important and useful features I find within PersonalBrain is the ability to attach a type to a thought. Why you might do this though is perhaps not always obvious. So in this screencast I'm going to use the monarchy of the United Kingdom as a way that I can demonstrate that to you. Now I'm going to assume that you already know how to use PersonalBrain. That will make things trip along a little bit quicker today. If you're not, may I suggest that you head across to thebrain.com and download a copy to trial. It works on Windows and the Mac. I've used it on both platforms very successfully. Once you've got your copy, run through their video that they have on PersonalBrain 101, and that will give you all the basics that you need. Then head back here and we'll build a monarchy together. Alright, where do we start? Well, the most obvious place to start with most of these things is Wikipedia. That's got the information with the accuracy that we need for this task. So you can see here the screen that I've got open at the moment, we have the most recent of monarchs up. They are George V, Edward VIII, George VI, and Elizabeth II. 4 kings and a queen. So let's get these entered into PersonalBrain, starting with George V. Now, if you put a semicolon between thoughts as you create them, you're able to create multiple thoughts at once. So Edward VIII, George VI, his successor, and the current reigning monarch Elizabeth II. I just hit enter and I'll have all 4 thoughts there. Now, without an understanding of thought types within PersonalBrain, to categorize these as kings and queens, you need to create some additional types. So Elizabeth II, she's obviously a queen, and we'll create a parent thought for her called Queen. Navigate back to our home thought, the monarchy of the United Kingdom, and we can do the same for Edward VIII. Create a parent called King, and there he is. Now at this point, the way I use the brain, the quickest way to add the other kings is just to drag down to the existing thoughts that you can see along the bookmarks along the bottom. Now that's great, but what if we want all kings and queens together? Well, you can't really see them. We've got kings or queens, kings related to queens usually. Probably if I was in this brain I'd want to see both, but I can't see all my kings and queens at the same time. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and enter in some extra information so we've got more kings and queens, and that will help this be a little bit more obvious. Okay, so if we come back to our monarchy of the United Kingdom, with the additional ones that I've entered in, you see our structure's not quite yet right. The original kings and queens that I've added in here have come directly under the monarchy item, but aren't attached further. So I think probably if you were looking at monarchy, the things you might want to see first are queen, and I'll link to my existing thought, and king, I'll link to my existing thought, and I'll unlink these 4 thoughts here because they don't really match to where I would expect the entry point of this brain to be. So monarchy of the United Kingdom, I see kings and queens, and if I drag across the wiki page to here, we can go directly to Wikipedia when the time comes and bring up that information as well, though obviously not in such a visual site as we've got here. So if we look at our kings, we have 9 kings there, 2 Edwards, 6 Georges and a William. And if we look at our queens, they have much more variability in names with an Anne, Victoria and Elizabeth. But again, we can't see our kings and queens at the same time. What they have in common though is that they're all monarchs. So if I listed the names of any of these people, I'd expect to see them as a monarch, and that's where thought types come in. We could go and drag from Queen Victoria and make her a monarch as well. And then we could add Anne and Elizabeth and all our Georges and Edwards and Williams as monarchs, but it's a sort of doubling up of information. It will make the brain a little bit messy. So what we can do instead is use thought types. The easiest way that I find when I'm creating a new thought type is to pick a thought of the type that I want and then add that information in. So let's go to Victoria here and select thought type from the menu. You'll see she's currently untyped. That's the default status for all thoughts. New type and entering Queen. Okay, so that's different from the Queen that we had earlier. This one's got a little dotted border around it, and that indicates it's the thought type. If we hover over Victoria, we'll now see a pop-up that says she's a Queen. I'm going back to the original Queen entry we had. As you'll see, if I hop over Victoria, you'll see she's a Queen, but I hop over Anne or Elizabeth, you'll see that there are not. Now there's a quick way to add these people as Queens, is to just hold down the Command key in Mac or Control in Windows. That will add everything that's the child of the current thought to the selection panel. Over here, then we can right click, set selection thought type. Now we have Queen in the list. Grayed out a little because we have a mix of untyped, 2 untyped items and 1 Queen. Click OK, or click on Queen, and you'll now see that both Anne and Elizabeth II have become Queens as well. So that's great. It really doesn't add much more information to what we've already got. But let's add a King thought type, and we can be a little bit faster now that we know what we're doing. Hold down the Command or Control key, right click, set selection thought type, new type from our selection, and type King. And you'll see that all our kings have become kings, whereas previously they were just sort of an untyped thing. So our system has 2 kings and 2 queens in the system in terms of thought types, or in terms of thoughts, but 2 of them are thought types. Now the advantage here is that we can drag another parent here and call it monarch. And this, when you look at it now, says king is a type of monarch. And when I click on king, I get Edward VII is a king. Come back up to monarch again and we link our queen in. I need to get the right queen. It's not the one that was under monarchy of the United Kingdom, but it's the one standing by itself. That's our queen thought type. And enter that. So we have queens on one side and kings on the other. How does this help us? I'm going to double click and just display the reports window here. I'll resize a little bit. And we can click on reports and ask it to give us all thought types who are kings. Again, the same information that we already had, but we can bring them all up together in one quick spot, no matter where they are in the plex. They don't have to be linked to that king thought, although they're the king thought type. Same for queens. We've got our 3 queens there. Nothing new. This is what we're already familiar with this model. But if we look at monarch now, we'll see a mix of all our kings and all our queens together. So that starts to give us a quick way, if you imagine a plex with many thousands of items in it, to go through all the kings and queens as they currently stand. And as you click on each one in this list below, you'll go to the appropriate thought. So that's a good way to handle things. One of the other things that we can do with a monarch thought type is add a little pizzazz. Add some visual clues to this information. Because our kings and our queens aren't really of much use to us if we can't identify them from the thousands of other thoughts that are there. What we have here is a search on Google Images for crown and PNG. PNG is a graphics format that lets the background of the page come through, and that can be really useful on PersonalBrain. If I choose this crown here as a nice one to go with, it says it's a variety of fine crown. I'll click on that to get through to the actual image. Once that's loaded, copy the image, and then we can get rid of that. Come over to Monarch, right click on it, paste thought icon, and when I paste this I'll be attaching that crown icon to Monarch. But watch what happens to King and Queen as well. They also have the crown because they're a type of monarch. And just to see what I was talking about with PNG, if you have a look here now, you can see that what was previously a white background is now a blue background because it has that transparent icon. I've found if you can find transparent icons and simpler ones, because they're so small, it works really well. You'll also see along the bottom here that Anne and Edward and Elizabeth all have crowns as well. It's a property called inheritance, and change that you make to one comes through to the others. We could have also made a change to the colors of this as well, and it would flow through. Now I'm just going to refresh the report down here, and if you look on the very far left, you'll see everything suddenly has a crown, except for Victoria. For some reason she doesn't, and well, here it is, it's caught up now.